I think a really important skill for all of us to cultivate is the ability to predict other people's behavior. And this is important for a number of reasons, one of them being safety. We gotta be somewhat good at predicting human behavior if we are to arm ourselves against those who would do us harm. Another reason is that it's important to get ahead in life. Like, if you're dealing with a difficult coworker, you need to be able to predict what they might pull on you in order to better protect yourself so that your job isn't in jeopardy. And just in general, to prepare your response for whatever somebody might try to throw your way. Like, if you know you're going home and dealing with some difficult family members, being able to cope ahead with what stressors they might throw your way. And the way to predict human behavior is actually quite simple. This is a skill that I've really tried to hone over the last few years, to the point where my husband and I actually have like a running joke that when I make a prediction about somebody, it almost always comes true. So today, let me teach you how you can do this. I'm going to talk about the 3 components of how to predict a person's behavior, and then I'm going to give you some examples to put it all into practice. The way I see it, there are 3 components to predicting human behavior. One of them is conscious pattern recognition, another is intuition or unconscious pattern recognition or precognition, and another one is a specific type of empathy and perspective taking. Starting with conscious pattern recognition. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Certainly people are capable of change, but they have to want to and they have to put in the work, and for the most part, you can't really operate under the assumption that someone has massively changed as a person since the last time you interacted with them. Now, it's possible that my background in psychology gives me a leg up on this, but often I find that all that really takes to predict a person's behavior is to just sit down and write down, what do I predict this person's going to do? Most of the times you already know the answer within yourself. Let me read for a second from this book, The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker, which is a wonderful book. I read it a few months ago, but it's all about the ways in which our intuition can keep us safe from people who would do us harm. And he says, when interviewing victims of anonymous threats, I don't ask who do you think sent you these threats, because most victims can't imagine that anyone they know sent the threats. I ask instead who could have sent them, and together we make a list of everyone who had the ability without regard to motive. Then I ask clients to assign a motive, even a ridiculous one, to each person on the list. Even people who professionally do this for behavior, who work on predicting human behavior when it comes to another person's safety. It's literally that simple. You already know what this person is going to do. You already have the capability of putting yourself in somebody's shoes and getting a sense for what they might try or what they might have tried. Of course, this takes being attentive to people's patterns. So for instance, if you're dealing with somebody who you're in the dark about who they are as a person, you might really struggle to predict their behavior because you ultimately are not paying attention to who they're telling you that they are. So that's the first component, conscious pattern recognition. The second component is unconscious pattern recognition, what is sometimes called intuition or precognition. Intuition might sound like a magical word, like it's just divine intervention, but the way that I'm using it in today's context is just referring to patterns that you've picked up on unconsciously or preconsciously. Patterns you've noticed, but not on a conscious level, but rather a deeper level, something that maybe you haven't put into words yet or you haven't quite realized, but your body has realized, your unconscious has realized for you. For example, in the beginning of this book, Gavin de Becker gives a really intense example that I don't think I can give on this channel. If you want to read his full book, it's on my Amazon storefront. But anyway, in the example, he's talking about how a woman evaded being unalived by somebody, and how she knew to predict how he was going to behave, even though obviously she didn't know this person very well. And that when they were tracing back the steps after the fact, Gavin de Becker helped her realize that there were certain cues that this man had given her that suggested what he was going to do, that she wasn't consciously aware of, but unconsciously her body already knew exactly what it needed to do. That is intuition. That is precognition. That is noticing patterns on an unconscious level and letting your body keep you safe. There's a reason why intelligence agencies have put a lot of research into precognition, because they know there's a lot of value in it. It's not going away because it's there for a reason. It's there to keep us safe. So why not use it to our advantage? And the third element of predicting a person's behavior is perspective taking or empathy. You need to be able to put yourself in the other person's shoes to accurately predict what they're going to do. Now look, empathy is not what would I do in this person's shoes. Empathy is what would this person do in their shoes. because what you might do in their shoes could be completely different. You might never even consider to do half the things that they do. You have to understand who they are based on previous information that you have about them, or if you don't have previous information about them, at the very least, your intuition, which is picking up on things quicker, and using that information to imagine based on their specific circumstances and motives and thoughts and feelings and all of that. What do you think they would want in this situation? How do you think they would go about getting that in this situation? To read again from The Gift of Fear. The human violence we abhor and fear the most, that which we call random and senseless, is neither. It always has purpose and meaning, to the perpetrator at least. Sometimes a violent act is so frightening that we call the perpetrator a monster, but as you'll see, it is by finding his humanness, his similarity to you and me, that such an act can be predicted. So if you want to predict human behavior, you have to rely on your common humanness with the other person. Even if you think they're a monster, they're not a monster. They're a human being who has similar motives to you. They just go about it in a different way. So I'm about to give you some examples because I realize this can be a little bit abstract when we talk about it in this way. And I have some really juicy examples for you. But before we get to that, I want to talk to you about Akiflow. Akiflow is a time-blocking platform that allows you to streamline all your planning efficiently. By using Akiflow, you can maximize your productivity and minimize procrastination. It has a very intuitive, easy-to-use interface, and you can easily integrate apps that you use like Gmail, Slack, Outlook, so that everything is just in one place on your schedule. For me, I find that it's really important to know what I'm going to do next, because if I don't know what I'm going to do next, it can be very overwhelming. And so having everything there in one spot and having my day planned out like that in chunks is very helpful. One of my favorite things about Akiflow is actually the stats feature, where you can see how you're using your time and how to use it more efficiently. Also, something new that they have is an AI feature where Akiflow automatically assigns your tasks to different projects. And if it's not correct, it's easily modifiable. Really, everything in Akiflow is easily modifiable. I like to joke that I am very bad at technology, that this channel should be called Technology with Dr. Anna. And so if I can make it work, you can definitely figure it out as well. Plus, signing up with Akiflow also gives you an onboarding call and one-on-one productivity coaching. So if you want to check out Akiflow, check out my link below. Thank you again to Akiflow for sponsoring a portion of today's video. Okay, let's get into some examples. This one's going to be a little bit vulnerable for me to share, but I really tried to think about what example would be most helpful in putting this into practice, so here goes. Recently, I was trying to navigate a conflict. I was hearing one person yelling at a second person, and I wanted to make that stop. So what happened is I went to go break up this verbal abuse that was happening. And as soon as I walked in, the person doing the yelling left and slammed the door. My heart was racing, but in that moment, I was like, okay, what do I do from here? And a lot of that decision-making process is derived from how is this other person going to behave next? Really taking an inventory of this person's patterns, I was able to, using conscious pattern recognition, acknowledge that this person's going to come back. This person has done this 1,000 times over, that they run out, slam the door, and come right back. So they're going to be here within the next 10 minutes probably. And if I call out their yelling, they are going to start yelling a lot harder, and the person that they were yelling at is going to be very upset. Because I also was trying to predict that person's behavior at the same time, because knowing this person, I know that they're actually not that upset about being yelled at. They're more upset about somebody standing up for them. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, knowing this, that this person's going to come back, they're going to come back with a fury. And if I call them out on what just happened, it's going to make things a lot worse. Of course, that person came back within the next 10 minutes. And when they came back, I noticed that my body language was just instinctively looking down. I was averting my gaze. I was trying not to make eye contact with this person. In the moment, I didn't think much of it. It was just like an instinctive reflex, right? But when I look back on it now, I recognize that the reason that happened is because from prior conflicts with this person, I knew that eye contact really sent this person over the edge, that they saw it as brazenness, as disrespect to look them in the eye when they are verbally abusing you. So there was the conscious pattern recognition, there was my intuition keeping me safe, and then there was also the perspective taking of, in that moment, I was kind of running through the calculations in my mind and saying, I know that this person is extremely sensitive to rejection, to cues that they are being rejected. So they are going to pick up on the body language I know that I can't control, that shows I'm scared of them, I don't want to be near them, I don't approve of them. But This person is not going to start yelling, even if they pick up on that, if there's somebody around who they want to impress. So what do you think I did? I called somebody over who I know this person would never yell around, and I averted the crisis. If I had not gone through that process, if I had just started calling them out and saying, like, why are you yelling at this person? It would have been World War III up in there. But by going through this process of trying to predict human behavior, I was able to somewhat de-escalate the situation. Let's use a different example, something lighter. Let's say that you have a flaky friend and you invite them to something. Let's say you invite them to celebrate your birthday. Your conscious pattern recognition probably says, hey, there have been X, Y, and Z situations in which this person has been late or has not shown up to something that I invited them to until the last minute. You might even have a sense of intuition, something that maybe you're not super aware of in the moment, but you're unconsciously picking up on, like something about their tone when you're talking to them or texting them just shows they're a little bit ambivalent about whether they want to show up to this event. And you're, of course, also perspective taking throughout all of this, thinking like, if I were in their shoes, I would, of course, show up on time, but knowing the type of person that they are, knowing maybe like how far they're coming from, and knowing historically that they tend to be late to things, they're probably not going to be there on time. And what do you do with this information? You invite other people to that event so that you're not just sitting there for however long and get stood up. So you use that ability to predict other people's behavior to empower yourself. Let's do one more example. Let's say you're dealing with a copycat. You've identified this consciously. This person has done A, B, C, D, E, F amount of things that has copied my behavior. And so when you go to hang out with them, let's say you have like a new hair color. You unconsciously notice something. When they first see you, when they first lay eyes on your hair color, you notice just like this little flare of excitement in their eyes or of envy or whatever it is that you think you see there. And you don't have any evidence to base this off of, but you just have this intuitive feeling that they're going to copy my hair color next. And then you also, of course, go through the perspective taking of saying, well, I know this person is shaky in their self-identity. I know that they have historically copied me on a lot of different things. So knowing that about them, my guess is that their next move in the situation is to copy my hair color. At the very least, you know that you were right in predicting this person's behavior when in 2 weeks they dye their hair the same color as you. Or if you want to even get a little spicy with it, maybe you tell them you joined the circus and see when they sign up. I hope this video was helpful. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and don't forget to check out Akiflow.